Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my round 16 2019 AFL tips and predictions. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the first game that we have is Hawthorn versus Collingwood, and after a rough week or so for both teams, both are definitely really wanting to bounce back. And yeah, this is a Friday night game. We don't have a Thursday night game this week, and I know a lot of people that's also been in discussion. Should we have a lot more Thursday games next year? And I really haven't decided my opinion on that yet, but I think Friday games are probably good for right now. But Hawthorn versus Collingwood both have had a rough week or two, and I think Collingwood are definitely wanting to bounce back after that really bad performance against North Melbourne. And I think that a lot of people were really angry, and the memes of Collingwood paying the umpires kept going around, so I thought it was pretty funny. I mean, just based on the fact that the free kick count was like 27-11 and Collingwood still lost by 60 points on it, I think that's why all the memes were a thing. And a couple of them were really funny, I'm not going to lie, but I don't know. It was definitely a really interesting game to watch, and I think a lot of Collingwood fans are definitely really interested to see how their boys are going to bounce back. And Hawthorn, obviously, this is probably the lowest I've ever seen them be in a long time. I mean, I don't know when the last time they were in 15th position was, but they've only got 5 wins for the season, and it hasn't been good so far. But believe it or not, I didn't even know that they were, doing this bad until, a couple weeks back. I thought they were doing okay, getting a couple losses here and there. But, yeah, 15th is probably not ideal for their fans. But to be honest, I think that this is at the MCG, and it is a Hawthorn home game, even though it's pretty much both their home games, actually. But I do believe that Collingwood will most likely win this one. I do think they'll bounce back and be too strong for Hawthorn, but Hawthorn have definitely got a lot to improve in the 2019 off-season. I think there is a lot of things they can definitely improve on. I know they're probably out of the Canelio race right now, but there are a couple of other players like Jonathan Patton they can potentially get. They just really need to keep forward at the moment, but yeah. So I do believe that Collingwood should win this one. Anyway, the next one we have is Essendon versus Sydney, and it is at the MCG. It's at Saturday, so I think that, both teams have been doing actually really well recently. I mean, Sydney is starting to bounce back, and they're in 12th position on 24 points, and they've won 6 games, and they've lost 8. Essendon are 7-7 and are on 28 points, and at least 2 weeks ago or so, I definitely thought that Essendon were 100% pretty much not going to make, or maybe not 100%, maybe 80%. I didn't think they were going to make the 8, but the chances of them making the 8 have actually improved a lot now, and they are playing really well and are definitely playing some good football. So I think it's always possible, and I definitely think they can potentially get the win against Sydney at the MCG, and that will pretty much put them on 32 points, which is either going to be right outside of the 8, or they potentially slide in, which I think might not happen because of obviously Port and Freo, but who really knows? Essendon are definitely there and contending to make the 8 right now, but I think Sydney have been playing really good recently, but it's definitely going to be a really big off-season for them as well, and I think there will be a couple moves they'll definitely be willing to make, and yeah, I think they could still make the 8 next year if they bounce back, but I don't really know. I think they might need to start, do that half rebuild, half contending type of thing where they keep finishing 12th for a couple of years and get, a good top 10 pick. I definitely think that that's potentially what Sydney should do, but yeah, I do believe Essendon should get the win against Sydney at the MCG. Now, the next one we have is Gold Coast versus Richmond, and Richmond finally got a bunch of their players back last week, and as a Richmond fan and watching that game, you could definitely tell the 7 players that they got back in. It definitely took a very long time to adjust. I mean, the first 3 quarters, it was pretty tight. I think at the end of the 3rd quarter, Richmond were only up by 2 or 3. No, I think it was 2 goals or something like that. And then at the last quarter, you can already tell that their 7 that they got in were finally starting to adjust and started to get a lot better. And that's when they ended up beating Saints by 30 points or so. And you could tell that there was still a couple players that didn't look right out there. Like Trent Cotchin looked like he was still, trying to get back his speed. And yeah, you can already tell that he just needed a week in the AFL to get back into it. And I think, that game against St Kilda was definitely the perfect one. And now they're versing Gold Coast up at Metricon Stadium. And even though I genuinely liked how Gold Coast have been playing this season, even though they're last position right now, I think their season has definitely been more successful than obviously Melbourne and Hawthorn and potentially even Carlton, because a lot of people had them not even winning a game, and they've been, doing very well this season. Have actually won at least 3 games, so I've definitely liked what they've done this year, and their young players have definitely been really good. But because, Richmond have gotten all their players back right now, and I do believe it's going to be very hard for Gold Coast to beat Richmond at the MCG. And at Metricon, sorry. And last time Richmond played Gold Coast at Metricon last year, I think they ended up beating them by like 80 points or something. So yeah, it's definitely a new look Gold Coast side, and Richmond obviously have their former captain now in Tom Lynch, who's probably going to want to kick a bag against his old side, so I think it's definitely going to be really hard for Gold Coast to win this game, but Richmond finally are getting most of their players back now, and obviously Jack Rewell, Alex Rance, Toby Nankervis, and I think a couple other players here and there are still out, like Jack Ross. I think, yeah, once they get those players back, they'll definitely be prime for September action. But anyway, the next one that we have is going to be Adelaide versus Port Adelaide at Adelaide Stadium. And I think this is going to definitely be a very big game. Potentially who loses this week is going to be, very, very bad for their season. If Adelaide lose, they could potentially be in 8th position. If Port Adelaide lose, that could potentially be finals hopes gone. But if Port Adelaide win, they could potentially go into the top 8, and if Adelaide win, that could keep them in striking distance of making the top 4. So, yeah, definitely going to be a really interesting one again on who wins this one. And unlike the other 3, I definitely was debating over who could potentially come home this week with the win, but I think that Adelaide, I tipped Port Adelaide in the earlier start of the season when they were versing, I think there's already been a showdown game this year, if I'm right. I'm not too sure, actually, but if there was, I'm pretty sure I tipped Port Adelaide, but I think I'm going to be tipping Adelaide for this game. I think that Adelaide usually cover Port Adelaide pretty well, and they definitely, their game style really stacks against Port Adelaide, which I know a lot of Port Adelaide fans would hate me saying that, and there's a couple of Port Adelaide fans that actually watch me, and yeah, even though I probably do like Port more than Adelaide, not going to lie, I think that Adelaide definitely covers their game style, and yeah, I think Port Adelaide are definitely going to try and change things up with their game plan and how they go about things, because yeah, Adelaide definitely seem to have them covered, but right now I'm going to be tipping in Adelaide, but who knows, I think definitely both gettable games for both teams, and I think it'll come up to who has the better 22 on the day with, no injuries and all that stuff. Port Adelaide will most likely get Tom Rockcliffe in this week, or so from what I know, so I think, yeah, it could definitely be a very interesting clash, and yeah, I can't wait for that game. Anyway, the next one we have is Western Bulldogs versus Geelong, and this one is definitely really interesting because Geelong are currently in first position, obviously 2 wins clear of everyone else, and this is actually at Marvel Stadium. I think this is definitely a game that they could drop off on, and Western Bulldogs could definitely get the win. Western Bulldogs have been playing some really good footy recently, and I know a lot of their fans are really liking what they're seeing, but are kind of hoping that they don't really, get even more wins because they kind of want to get a good pick, and I think as as most Western Bulldogs fans would think, they definitely need a couple more young players here and there, but their list is definitely looking really good. But obviously, Caleb Daniel is now injured, and I think they've got a couple other players here and there that are also injured. But, this is at Marvel Stadium, and I think that Geelong don't usually play very well there from what I remember and what I know. So I definitely think that Western Bulldogs could potentially get the win here. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a real 50-50, but right now I actually think I'm going to be tipping in Western Bulldogs to get the win over Geelong at Marvel Stadium. Anyway, the next one we have is Fremantle versus West Coast, another big showdown match, and this is obviously at Optus Stadium, with Fremantle actually being the home game here, and I think both teams have played really well this year, and if West Coast can win this, will pretty much cement themselves in a top 4 spot for at least a week or 2, but if they do lose this, they could potentially, GWS could actually go over them, and obviously if Brisbane get a, good enough percentage boost, they could potentially get over them as well, but I'm not too sure about that, so I think West Coast will be safe in the top 4 either way. Well, Fremantle, 28 points at the moment, 7-7. If they drop this, they will most likely fall out of the 8, while if they do win this, they could potentially remain in 8th spot, or potentially move up to at least 7th spot or something like that, so definitely massive costly game for Fremantle. Not really too much on West Coast side. As I said, if Fremantle lose this, they could potentially move out of the top 8. So, yeah, it's definitely going to be a massive game for them. But at the moment, I think if West Coast can get their best 22 out on the field, I definitely think West Coast will most likely beat Fremantle at Optus Stadium. Alright, moving on to the Sunday games now. And the first one we have is Carlton versus Melbourne. And where I've definitely been surprised about Carlton's efforts in the past couple of weeks. They're definitely doing a lot better, and their young list is finally starting to show something, which, as you guys know, I'm very critical of Carlton, and I don't think their young players have really showed much at all. Every year, Carlton fans go into the season hoping their team is going to get better, and what happens, it doesn't really, and the young players never really showed that much, but I feel like they're starting to finally get there. I mean, it's been a couple years now, but yeah, they're definitely finally starting to get there, and this is the first time they haven't been last in like a year and a half to two, so I think that, yeah, as I said, they're getting there, but if I had to take Gold Coast or Carlton's list, I just think that even though Gold Coast are last right now, they've definitely probably, shown a lot more than what I've seen from Carlton's youngsters. I mean, Gold Coast are definitely, behind than Carlton in the rebuild, but I definitely think that, Gold Coast, they started a little bit later, and as I said, Gold Coast, they're doing really well with the young players that they currently have, and as I said, they don't have as many, experience as what the Carlton players do, so I definitely think I'd probably take Gold Coast young list at the moment, but I think Carlton's list can definitely prove me wrong. Their young players are definitely going out there and showing what they can do, while Melbourne, wow, what a disappointing season it has been. I know there's this one Melbourne, my best friend is actually a Melbourne supporter, and he literally said that he is really, focusing on his Supercoach players rather than his team at the moment, which I think is pretty funny, and that's just based on the fact that, it's not his fault or anything, it's just Melbourne have been really bad, and he still watches the games and everything like most Melbourne fans do, but yeah, as I do as well, it's just a really stressful situation to watch Melbourne try and play their footy out there with a lot of their backmen even fighting this year, and yeah, their backline seems to be under siege, their forward line, it's really hard to get a good mark in there, their midfield has problems with Clayton Oliver. He literally, every time I watch them, Clayton Oliver just hand passes, doesn't kick the ball, and it's, yeah, sometimes he hand passes to players in a lot of danger, and the ball movement is just really bad. And I'm not even just saying it's Clayton Oliver's fault, but there's a couple other midfielders that Melbourne have there at the moment that is doing a similar thing. But to be honest, even though Melbourne have had this really bad season and Carlton are on the rise, I definitely think that Melbourne should and most likely will get the win against Carlton at the MCG. But who really knows at this point? Carlton could come out of nowhere and definitely surprise a lot of people. But I'm really interested to see how Melbourne can bounce back with a couple of their backmen fighting. Stephen May, and I forgot who the other player was, but yeah, it definitely seems to be the chemistry at the moment is not particularly the best with the Melbourne players, but I think there's definitely a lot to improve on, and yeah, but I do believe they will get the win against Carlton. Anyway, the next one we have is North Melbourne versus St Kilda, and both teams have been really, really good recently, and it kind of annoys me seeing that a lot of St Kilda fans are saying to get Richo out. I mean, I think St Kilda winning 6 games this year is definitely really good, and the fact that they were like 12th position last week is insane for the list that they currently have. I think their list is definitely a bottom 4 list at the moment, or even the 3rd worst list in the AFL, and the fact that they are sitting at 14th position and they were 12th like last week, they've had a really good season in my opinion. I definitely don't like that a lot of people are, saying get their coach out, he's fired immediately. I think they've done really good, and yeah, they've definitely surprised me, but North Melbourne recently, they've definitely shown a lot of improvement as well, even with their best player, Sean Higgins, being out. But this is actually at Tasmania, I believe, and, North Melbourne are really good at Tasmania, so I definitely think they can potentially get the win here. But yeah, St Kilda have definitely been really good this year, and I definitely don't like that a lot of people are saying, that their coach should be fired, that they've done all these bad things, but realistically, their coach was the one that played a couple of their players like Matthew Parker and all that stuff and gave those players a chance, and how good have they been this year? So I think we need to give their coach a little bit more credit for what they've done. Alan Richardson has definitely been a lot better than what a lot of people are saying this year. Anyway, the next one we have is GWS versus the Brisbane Lions at Giant Stadium, and I think that Brisbane have been really good this year. They definitely don't want to drop this one, as they could potentially fall down to at least 6th or 7th position. I think 6th position is the lowest they can fall down to. But if they could do a massive statement win here, beating GWS at Giant Stadium, that would be absolutely insane. But yeah, I just don't think that's going to happen. I really do think that GWS are most likely going to be Brisbane at obviously their home game. GWS will definitely want to cement themselves as a top 4 team and will potentially want to get over West Coast and get into that 3rd position. But yeah, who really knows? I definitely think that this is definitely a gettable game for Brisbane, but I think that they definitely need to show what they can do in this game and verse Brisbane at their home stadium. I mean, GWS at their home stadium, sorry, because obviously GWS are insane at their stadium, not too good at Melbourne, but yeah, I think that Brisbane definitely needs to go in here and show their fans that they can win away from home and, yeah, beat a very good top 4 side like GWS. Anyway, I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for all the latest AFL content. Don't forget to comment in the comment section down below. What do you guys think about my tips and predictions? And definitely let me know your tips and predictions. I definitely would really like to know if you guys agree with me or what. And, yeah, don't forget to subscribe to my gaming channel and my IRL/vlogging channel, link in the description down below. I've been recently posting some NBA and AFL Evolution videos on my gaming channel, and my New Zealand vlogs for my vlogging channel will eventually be coming out. I know there's been a couple of you guys definitely waiting for that, and don't worry, they are coming out. But yeah, as I said, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and comment, and I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.